So my name is Cam Folsom. I'm a multi-time national champion heavyweight Olympic boxer, former captain of the USA national boxing team, 12-time national champion, and three-time Olympic trials champion.
Let's just start from the very first. What was your earliest memory of boxing?
Uh my dad used to watch boxing a lot, and I honestly I thought it was stupid. It's like, first of all, I like gloves. I don't like mittens. So I would never wear mittens. I would always wear gloves when it was cold out because I always like control of my fingers. And the concept of putting boxing mittens on, just punching each other and then hugging after, seems stupid to me. And that was something I would mock him for watching. And then when I turned 16, I was dealing with anxiety and bullying. And I thought if I joined the boxing gym, it would do a few things. One, it helped me get laid because that's important when you're 16. Two, teach me how to defend myself. And three, give me confidence and allow me to lose weight. So that was kind of, I didn't really get started until I was 16, 17 years old for those reasons.
So you had so many options in then. You could have gone weightlifting, you could have done running or anything like that. Why specifically boxing? What sort of attracted you to the idea of boxing?
It was the only free gym in my neighborhood. It was the only thing I could afford. I don't even like boxing. To this day, I don't watch it really. Unless my friends are fighting, I'll watch to support my friends. I'll go to fights if my friends are fighting. But I don't really care for the sport. It was just a means to an end.
Um, your first setback was your original suspension, or at least your first setback through the documentary. And what was the feeling when you were working so hard? And can you explain a little bit to people that probably don't know what happened with the first suspension?
Yeah. So I was traveling about 300 days a year with boxing, and I moved and I changed my address, but I forgot to tell the drug testing agency I changed my address. So they showed up to my old address to drug test me three times. I missed all three. And weirdly enough, they sent a letter saying that I was suspended to that same address that I never got. So for about 4.5 months, I was still out competing, not knowing I was suspended for missing drug tests. Even though all the tournaments that I fought in, you have to get drug tested to fight in. So it wasn't that I was hiding from them. It was just I didn't know I didn't update my email address. And at first I thought, oh well, it can't be true that people don't get kicked off the Olympic team. I can't possibly have done this much work and not been able to go to the Olympics. I'm sure we'll figure it out. And after we had a hearing and it was like official, I was devastated. I was heartbroken. I was frustrated. Uh, I felt stuck because I didn't go to college. I don't have any skills or any abilities other than fighting. And the only thing that I knew how to do was taken from me. And then I had the embarrassment of being the guy who got kicked off the Olympic team, not for actually doing drugs or fun drugs or steroids, for actually forgetting to update my address. So it was terribly embarrassing. And I felt humiliated. I felt like I let myself down. I let down fans, family, friends. Uh, yeah, it sucked.
It's a weird sort of correlation because Anthony Joshua, early into his boxing career, when he was boxing for the Olympics, got caught with drugs, got caught with weed in London in his Olympic boxing gear and everything, and then got given a second chance. And it baffles me how you didn't really get given that chance necessarily, when it wasn't even you weren't even caught with anything, you weren't caught doing anything. It was just an honest mistake that anyone could have made at any point.
Yeah, I believe it was because Lance Armstrong had went on Oprah back in 2012, and it made the drug testing agency seem incompetent. So because of the backlash, they cracked down on a bunch of athletes for minor offenses that didn't really mean anything. To the point where in 2016, I'm not going to mention the name of the fighter because I like her, but she got she got a drug tested and she tested positive for actual steroids. And she got out of it because she said she had sex with a guy and he came in her. And that's why it was in her system. regardless of how it got in your system, shouldn't fucking matter. But I still got suspended, and she didn't get suspended at all.
Wow.
Uh,
Yeah,
so
that's some
that's
sort of,
how silly shit is.
yeah, well, it genuinely did. That's what I'm like. It only just thought to me like straight now was I remember the Joshua situation before he went to the Olympics, and that he got caught with it and it got given. Admittedly, he wasn't doing anything, but similar sort of situation in terms of neither of you doing anything on purpose to try and get an advantage or anything like that. It was just to try and yours was not even any of that in general. But you also then changed your name a few years. Was it a few years later? What was
It was the next year.
yeah? So the following year you changed your name. What was the reason behind this? What sort of struck this off and why?
Uh, so back in secondary school for me, I would walk. I had to walk to the boxing gym every day, and it was I guess it would be near 3 kilometers. It was a 6 mile walk, and it would take me about 3 hours every day to walk to the gym. And this is back in 2006 before we had music on our phones. So I would just make up stories in my head. And if I'm going to make up stories, bro, I'm going to be the protagonist of my story. So I would make up stories about I was kicking everyone's ass. I had all the money, I had all the girls, I had all the cars. None of this was true, but like I had nothing else to think about. So I just thought about how much of the shit I was. And like I went from being really unconfident to actually believing the shit I was saying for 3 hours a day. So for 15 hours a week, I was basically patting myself on the back and saying how amazing I was. And it changed my confidence and allowed me, if I'm being real, I was cocky. I was arrogant. I loved it. My shit didn't stink. I knew I was going to win every fight. And then when I got kicked off the Olympic team, all that confidence went away. And I felt like I was stripped of everything. And after my year suspension, I was trying to get back in shape to get back into boxing. I couldn't seem to lose the weight or get anything going. I'd work out for a few days and I would fall off. I'd work out for a few days and fall off. And I was beating myself up one day. I'm like, oh, you fucking idiot, you piece of shit. And the stuff that we tell ourselves sometimes. And I thought back to the difference between me in 2012 and me in 2006. One of us liked me. And I decided in that situation, in that part, I was like, oh, I hate myself. And I'm never going to want the best for myself or reach my full potential if I hate myself. So I wanted to change my internal dialogue. So let's say you go grocery shopping and you get you get your stuff from the car, you bring it on your counter, and then you realize you forgot your phone in the car. In that moment, you say, oh, sometimes we're forgetful, time to go get that phone. Or you like, you idiot, you can't believe you forgot your phone. It's like a lot of us are really mean to ourselves. And I decided I was going to be my best friend. I was going to be my biggest fan. I was going to be my biggest supporter. So I changed my last name to Awesome as a reminder that I am awesome. My shit doesn't stink and I'm capable of anything. I also changed my middle name to the letter F because it was the last fuck I had to give. But it's just the letter F. I didn't spell out the whole word, so I don't get in trouble for it.
That's genuinely one of the best stories I've heard doing this whole thing. That's so cool. And I saw it and I didn't really realize why, and that doesn't really get explained much in the documentary necessarily, and it was just sort of like brushed over. But hearing that story, that's brilliant. I love that. Um, and then so you fought some of the world's best in terms of you fought Lawrence Okoli, you fought Jared Anderson, Fraser Clark, who's now fighting for a British championship, just recently now. What was it like sharing the ring, and how do you look back on it, seeing the position that how far they've come necessarily? Did you sort of maybe pick one person out when you were fighting them and think that guy's going to go on, or is it more just you'd fight everyone and think the same thing?
Oh, so first of all, I don't know how the hell I became so successful. I don't even see myself as a boxer. Like, I just saw myself as someone who knows the rules and will bend them to win. Uh, so like the fact that I got to be in the ring with all these big name guys, I think it's pretty cool. Uh, I, I, I would say I sparred uh, Joshua Anthony I sparred him. He didn't have many fights. He was real green, and I had a whole bunch. I had way more experience than he did, so I did better than him. Not that I beat him up in sparring or anything, but I did. I had so much more experience than him. He was basically new at boxing, and I got out of the ring. And I was like, oh geez, this guy's gonna be special. Like the only thing that's stopping him from beating everyone's ass is he didn't know anything yet, and I could tell like he was gonna be special. Uh, Lawrence, I enjoyed fighting Lawrence. I hate southpaws, and uh,
Yeah, you sound
and
like
it was a fun fight. I lost that fight.
you sound like a lot of the UK
Uh,
community when they fight Lawrence Okoli, to be fair. They just seem to be a lot very frustrated with him.
yeah, but he is a cool dude, and like I myself, my goal wasn't to be a boxer. What I wanted to do was I wanted to win enough stuff in boxing to leverage athlete privilege. Athlete privilege is kind of a concept I came up with. I will tell you, I get opportunities only because I was good at a sport. Like the reason why you wanted to interview me is because I was good at a sport. I get I date way above my class. Like I'm not that attractive, but I date hot chicks because I'm really good at the sport. I get jobs and opportunities. I'm a speaker. I'm on stages I don't deserve to be on. Why? Because I punched people for a while. So I knew my goal in boxing was to just win as many things as I can and then use that to leverage it for any career I want in the future. So I never identified as a boxer. And I think I was kind of clear through the documentary. I thought it was like, it's something I do, but it's not who I am. And I do think I'm so grateful that I looked at it in that way because I see a lot of athletes who, once they're done with their sport, they suffer from deep depression because if they're not an athlete, they don't know who they are. And luckily, I always knew who I was. I was the shit. I just happened to box, and if I loved I loved the opportunity to travel around the world, and I got to fight so many cool people. I got to meet so many cool people. So I'm grateful for boxing, but it's not what I wanted to do when I grew up.
Um, yeah, well, you say that, but like you obviously got so far with it. I don't believe like that you shouldn't be in the position that you're in now. The way that you speak alone, just to me now, it just shows that you should be in the position that you're in as a speaker. You speak so confidently of yourself, and speak so well and cleanly, and like quite honestly, I think that putting yourself down a little bit like that is probably not necessarily. I understand you're coming from, but in the way of athlete privilege. But I believe that you being in the position you are wasn't by luck or by chancing necessarily of just because you were a good boxer. I believe that a lot of other things do go into it.
Oh yeah, I agree with that. But so I didn't go to college, and what I looked at it as like if you have an associate's degree and I have a national championship, and we go out for the same job, who do you think's going to get it? And then let's say you have a bachelor of four. National championship. I look my
Oh no.
hello.
Hello? Can you hear me?
You can hear? Yeah, I can hear you now. I think I
Yeah, I can
froze.
hear you too. Sorry, I don't know what happened there.
Oh, I was just saying. I looked at national championships as college degrees. So after I won my 10th national championship, it was solidified in my mind that okay, I can do anything I want now, with using that athlete privilege.
Yeah, I think it puts a lot of. It's not obviously given maybe respected as much, but it put those 10 national championship probably shows more life experience than any bachelor's degree or any sort of university degree could probably give you in the 4 or 5 years that you potentially could be there. So I this it's a good and interesting way, a lot more interesting way to think about it.
Yeah, and I was a shit student.
And then after a loss in the quarterfinals of 2016, you missed the chance to get to the Olympics and you created your business now and your speaking business. How did it feel to find that success outside of boxing? You said that necessarily you didn't see yourself as a boxer, but you also didn't see yourself as a student. So how did you find the success of creating your own business?
I always saw myself as a hustler, and when I didn't make it in 2016, the first thing I did was I came back to the States and I joined the National Speakers Association and to learn how to become a speaker. And I realized that most speakers don't get paid because they aren't good. And my philosophy in boxing was like, if you have 100 fights and I have 3 fights and were to fight, who do you think would win?
The 100 fights, you'd imagine, yeah.
And it's just experience. So I wasn't athletically gifted. That's why I'm awkward and all of that. But my thought process was like the average boxer here in the States has maybe 30 to 40 fights. If I were to just have 100 fights, after 100 fights, all my other fights are going to be easier. So I retired with over 400 fights because I just wanted more experience than anyone else. The more time you spend in the ring, the better you become. And I learned the more time I spend on stage, the better speaker I become. So I sold all my stuff. I bought a van and I lived in a van for 3 years. Because if I lived in a van, I didn't have to pay for hotels, flights, or rental cars. And it allowed me to keep my living expenses low and build my business and learn. I made a lot of mistakes, but my overhead was very low. So it allowed me to build my business. And I went all over the United States speaking. So I built connections all across the country and built a foundation for my speaking business. And now I think I'm an amazing speaker because I spoke more than most speakers will ever speak in their lives. I'm just going to go harder than anybody else ever.
There's real hustler's mindset.
Yeah.
Um, at first, how did it affect you after I've heard a story? I don't know how true it is, but when you went back to try and qualify again for the Olympics, you were told you couldn't box or you had to give up your business. Was that true?
Yeah. So Team USA. So I travel 300 days a year with my speaking, and uh, I, I always coached myself. Throughout my career, I was basically my own coach. There was a guy who would finance and pay for me to go places, but I would fly places by myself. I'd wrap my own hands. I'd warm myself up. I'd fight. I just ask a random coach who was there to work my corner, and because I'm self-sufficient, I know how to coach myself. Uh, when you're on Team USA, they want you to live at the Olympic Training Center with their coaches, and they wouldn't allow me to leave to travel to speak. So I would have to cancel all the speaking engagements I had already booked. So I decided I wasn't going to do that. I decided my dad's from Trinidad, so I flew to my dad's home country. I learned about his country, learned about his culture. I became a dual citizen. I fought in the Olympic trials, won by knockout, and returned to the States to continue to travel around the country speaking and training myself. And that's when the pandemic happened. And so 2008, I made it to the Olympic trials. I lost. 2012, I won the Olympic trials. I got suspended. 2016, I won the Olympic trials, but lost in international competition. 2020, I won the Olympic trials, but Trinidad didn't send a team because of COVID.
That's the most. I, I was reading through your story and through every step and after post documentary and everything, and it is you are probably one of the greatest amateur boxers who never made it to the Olympics, if not probably the greatest amateur boxer to never make it to the Olympics. Like your story going from from how it's gone and how much you've gone through, and then to still be up and running and speak to people about it, it's very inspiring. Um,
Thank you, man.
Then after that, it was you were told you can never box again due to a detached retina, was it?
Yeah. I got it. I after it was 2021. I hadn't been 2020. Yeah, 2021, I believe. I haven't been boxing for a year and a half. And I woke up one morning. I do my gratitude journal every morning, and I went to open my gratitude journal. I realized I couldn't see out of my right eye, and they rushed me in for emergency surgery. I had a detached retina, and they said if I got hit again, I might be permanently blinded in my right eye. And I'm not for quitting, but I am for seeing. And I realized like I in 2012 when I got kicked off the Olympic team, I had nothing. I had no backup plan, and the reason why I changed my last name to Awesome was to make myself more marketable, to have a career for myself for after boxing. Uh, and that was my goal when I returned to boxing. I changed my last name to Awesome, and I would do stand up comedy. I would perform places to make sure I had a plan for after sports. After I retired, I lost vision in my eye and I could never box again. And it didn't bother me because I already had a very successful business to fall back on. And I'm not a fighter. I don't identify as a fighter. And I'm so grateful for that because there's so many athletes who don't have anything else other than their sport. And even if you play to the age of 40, that's half your life. What are you doing with the rest of it?
Yeah, I think that's the main struggle that I'm trying to sort of find out through the project that I'm doing. That was the aim of the project even when I first started. What do people do after boxing and after their sport? And you can see some people fall apart and could hurt themselves really badly, or do it to the point where they're going to hurt themselves at the moment. I know there's a UFC fighter, Alex Volkanovski, who's fighting this weekend, has spoken previously about he struggles when he's outside of a camp. He struggles a lot. He starts drinking when he doesn't have a fight booked, and you really sort of start to think like either someone's going to push him, he's going to push himself to a competition where he shouldn't be in, and will get himself really hurt, or will retire and get himself hurt in other ways, and will really struggle. And so I think it's a nice, refreshing mindset to have that you can't identify your life as being a boxer because that's going to end some way or another.
Yeah. Yeah, I speak at I guess universities, you got called college universities and high schools to athletes about giving everything to your sport. Like I gave boxing my all. I dedicated myself fully to it, but I also had a plan for after sports because I didn't, for one, and I won't even mention his name out of respect, but there's a fighter he fought back in the 90s. He fought Tyson once. And I met him at a boxing event, and he saw me. He's like, "Oh man, Cam on!" He hugs me, and then 30 seconds later, he turns around and he sees me again. He's like, "Oh man, Cam!" And he does the same thing over again. And he has such short-term memory that his wife just walks over, takes him, and walks him away. And I saw that. I was like, "Oh, that's not what I want to be like."
Yeah,
I I, I don't want to take too many punches.
that's a heartbreaking story, but it's one that probably happens a lot more around the country than you'd think, and more in the sport than you'd think, and especially even you'll hear about those fighters through stories or anything like that. But then there's also going to be thousands of people that have been hit by a massive injury or struggled even through their amateur career or even an early pro career that you won't hear the story of, and that's what I'm trying to sort of shed a light on as well, is to try and give a light to the people that don't have that story, that don't have the platform to tell that story, or will struggle to tell that story.
Yeah, and it's like the pros aren't. It's not guaranteed. And if you put to be a successful boxer, you have to put everything in the sport. And if you're putting everything in the sport, well, you don't have a business mind to build a business while you're boxing. There's a fighter, Steve Gaffard. I mean, Steve was the man. He was winning more stuff than I was. And he turned pro, and his first fight, I believe he broke his wrist during the fight. So he started 0-1. Second fight, he got a headbutt. He started his career 0-2. He went from being the number one boxer in the country to being an 0-2 boxer.
Ooh.
And right now, he's still fighting. I don't know how much he's making. I'm sure he's not making a great career out of it. And he's like 21-3 or something. But it's boxing's not a promise, and it's a brutal sport. And a lot of amateurs think, "Oh, I'm going to turn pro. There's too much politics in boxing." In amateur boxing, I'm like, you don't think there's politics when money's involved?
Hmm.
So when you're a boxer, you're disposable. Someone's willing to fight twice as hard for half the money. So no one really actually cares about the boxer. If I was going to make money in boxing, I would much rather, I would set up the ring for people to fight in before I actually got in the ring to fight. Because the guy who's setting up the ring, he makes money. It's residual money. You own the ring, you can just set that up anywhere. But the boxer, he's the last one to get paid and the first one who would die.
That's a mental like sort of switch to look at it in that way, and it's the honest way to look at it, to be honest, because there's so many people that would throw even like when you look at any level of boxing, trainers are probably the closest that you've got to people that want to be in your corner. But as soon as the money goes away, a lot of trainers also go away, and promoters are the same way. Any promoter that doesn't see you making money will be that quick to snap you off or throw you under the bus straight away. I think it's a real struggle to see that there's a lot of boxers out there that will probably go into the pro game thinking amateurs is such a struggle, or it's such a there's so much this and that are struggling and that people have power over. But when money's involved, you can tell people get tenfold worse. People get tenfold worse in trying to hurt, trying to put their interests ahead of you. And as soon as that check goes, the zero goes on the end of it, they'll turn straight away on you.
Oh yeah, I see it happen all the time, and I try to tell fighters that. Of course, I think people should follow their dreams and swing for the fences, uh, but just know the risks that you're taking. So, question: What's this kind of project? What's this project about? What's the objective?
So the original, it's just my original pitch or plan was given to me was I've got 10,000 words. I can split it to as many articles as I want, and I've just got to pick a overhead subject. I was really into boxing, and I started working like voluntarily into boxing, doing boxing shows and speaking to people as an interviewer and doing some filming. And then so I thought, like, what's an interesting subject that people don't really speak about in boxing? And mental health is a huge subject that was going in and around rugby at the time and football at the time. And I thought, well, boxing's a big sport, and it's probably the most in terms of health, what the most you could struggle with from just alone before you even get in the ring. Weight cutting, if done unsafely, could hurt you and cause lasting damage. Let alone when you get in the ring, eventually, if you come out of your career maybe potentially healthy from what you think, then 5 years later you get hurt. Like it's probably the one of the most dangerous sports in the world, realistically. And every time you step in there, you're the goal of and the objective is to hurt the other person. I'm not saying that that's not enjoyable. I love boxing. I'm a massive fan of boxing, but that's something that the dark side of it you don't see as a fan, and because people will show you the highlight KOs, the big KOs on Instagram, on Twitter, on whatever will get the views. No one's showing you the guy that sat in his chair, can't remember your name, can't remember their grandson's name or a family member's name.
Mm,
No one shows you that. And I think as much as no one wants to necessarily see that and no one wants to sort of show that necessarily because it hurts their brand in boxing, I'd much rather show that and show what because I think it does twofold. Obviously, it helps the sport become safer, and hopefully it shows people the actual reason like that the sport is really that dangerous, and it shows the real implications of what you're getting into. And then on the second time, it shows how strong these people are going into the ring, like and how what they put on the line every single time, whether it's a small amateur belt that I'm going to tomorrow, or whether it's Anthony Joshua and Francis Ngannou in a few weeks' time. Like people are putting their bodies on the line, their futures on the line every time for people's entertainment. And you see a load of people on Twitter moaning, saying, "Oh, he should have done this, he should have done that." Or he's too much of a he's too scared to fight this person, he's too scared to fight this person. And I just think like that is the worst view. How pathetic can you be to look at that and think that's what you think, and to ever have a comment on someone that's never been in the ring from someone that's never been in the ring is just
yeah.
absolutely like mind-boggling to me.
Oh yeah, and it's a part of the sport. I do have a weird, controversial opinion though.
Go on.
I don't believe boxing should be any safer.
Yeah, okay. I
Don't
can
want it to.
I would, yeah, I can understand that. I don't necessarily mean by the actual way the sport is or the way that sport competes in necessarily. I'm thinking more from what I've done in my research. There's not really much you can do to make the sport more safe in the ring and to make it because otherwise you get to the point where it'd be pointless because no one's going to watch it. Then no one cares. I meant more
Yeah,
in terms of the side of things in camps, training camps, stuff like that. I
yeah,
think the way that I've sort of seen people through it. I spoke to a CTE specialist a few months ago, and he told me, and from the research I've done, it seems like the most injuries are done in the gym anyway. In the
Yeah,
actual rings, a tiny percentage. And when you think
yeah,
about it, guys are sparring hundreds of rounds to lead up to a 10-round fight. What do you think is going to do the more damage?
by far. No one sees that. And there are guys who, because they let's say you have a shit record, uh, they they become journeymen and sparring partners. So if you're a great fighter but you're 19-4, no one's gonna pay to watch you fight. So what you do is you spar guys who are undefeated.
Hmm.
So you're just all you're doing is taking punishment for a living. And yeah, I didn't want to do that. So if you have, because to me, I grew up without money, and my reason for boxing was to just make sure I was in a better financial position. And now that I am, I realize I'm not victim. I'm not going to be a victim to boxing. So when I realize it's boxing's not serving me anymore, I can just walk away. But there are guys who they have no other skill sets, they have no degrees, they have no certifications, they don't have any jobs. So they just continue to fight and spar. And I don't want to be one of those people.
Yeah, I think it's interesting to see that you have the mindset, because I've seen people throughout the process of doing this and thinking that like boxing, and from even before speaking to you, thinking like that boxing must be everyone's life, especially when you compete at a level that you've competed at. I was even getting ready for my questions, was asking a lot of them was based around your um struggles in boxing, and struggles through competing, necessarily trying to get to the Olympics, because that's the way that I thought of it. But then thinking of it as like a person who necessarily shouldn't need boxing is a lot much better way of thinking of it, because people then will struggle less. I think thinking of it more as a job and a way of getting through, which it at the end of the day it is to a lot of people and to most people, is a much better way of thinking about it, and I think a much safer way for a lot of people.
Yeah, the gym I went to in high school and secondary school, the shirts we said it said it was a police athletic program to keep kids off the streets, and the shirts literally said keeping kids in playgrounds and outside of prisons. It was the idea was to use boxing to get you out the hood, and no one said you had to do it by fighting. I
Yeah,
just decided to be creative with it.
yeah, no, that's a it's a nice way to think of it in terms of how different people can interpret things. Everyone else would interpret that as oh, I've got to go to the gym, I've got to fight for my life, then carry on, carry on, carry on. But people don't think of it as it is a way mentally, at least, to switch off and to get out of it. Like, I've boxed before. I did it started last year, um,
Oh,
uh, doing some white collar stuff, and I enjoyed it. And then I took my first loss in my first fight, which was heartbreaking. But then I also saw it as like, no matter whether I'm just training and having fun, or whether I'm actually training for a fight and getting in there, I still enjoyed it just as much. I got
yeah,
into the fight.
I
Thank
think
you.
everyone can fight. Like
Yeah.
everyone should have one sober on stage performance.
Oh
Because
god. I don't know. I
I
don't
bet
know whether I could do that.
I bet you learned so much about yourself coming up to that first fight. You probably never experienced something like that. And then you learned how to lose, bro. Everyone loses in life. Like half of us lose all the time. Like, and boxing teaches you how to lose, and it's subjective when you lost. So, like in life, you might get screwed over on a business deal or something like that. But in boxing, when you didn't lose, it's because you didn't work hard enough or you're not experienced enough. And you're responsible for that, which teaches you you're in control of your own destiny.
I think it changed my thoughts on a lot of things. I was a little bit lackluster in the last few years at uni, and then I went into that boxing experience. And as you said, like after I got out of it, I thought to myself, it was because I didn't want it more. The guy who I fought was big lad, hit like an absolute truck, but like he wanted it more than me, and you could tell that he did throughout the whole experience of the whole lead up to the camps. And or both of us, because we trained, it was a charity thing, so we trained in the same sort of area and same ring, and then was all mixed up at the end of it. But yeah, that it shows that like you do have yourself to blame at the end of it, or not to blame necessarily, but to look back in yourself and think like yeah, if I'd have trained harder, I probably would have won. I could have comfortably won, but it was unnecessarily a my thing, and that led me into my final year of uni. I've not since probably September time when I started my final year. I have non-stop every single week just gone into it thinking if I'm not slipping up because I'm not leaving that ounce, that little bit of fate to lead me into the position where I won't have a career in what I want to do.
Yeah, it makes you go hard in the paint.
100%. Unreal. Um, yeah, so we got off to a bit of a tangent, but just to finally sort of end the interview, I've got two last questions. Um, now that you go around the country and talk and speak about how's your experience in that? You,
It's a so the reason I like boxing, one, I like beating people up, but two, I liked all the traveling that was involved in it. But now I do all the same traveling. I travel even more now, but I don't have to check my weight and I don't get hit. So and I also get to change life and I get to inspire people. And I realized all my fuck ups, all my mess ups, all my mistakes, I can have other people learn from that, especially teenagers, because some of the older people, they're harder to convince to do something different. But a 14-year-old, they can hear something you say and it changes the way they look even slightly, and it if even if it moves them by 1 degree, that 1 degree is going to be such a big change in their life over the span of 20 years. And I love the fact that I get to do that. And also, I I just have to be myself. And it's not like I have to memorize statistics or anything. I just say stuff that happened to me. And there's nothing I know more than me. So even though I learn more about my stuff all the time, but yeah, it's been a blessed opportunity, and it's crazy that people pay me to do this. It's like I had this plan to like box, win a bunch of shit, and then make a career out of it, and I did it. And I'm like, sometimes I think, oh, I pulled it off. It's crazy.
and then one last one. What one piece of advice would you give to someone either younger that either wants to start boxing or wants to be in the position that you're in right now?
I would say that people only get about 60% of what they expect in life. So let's say your goal is to make 100,000 pounds a year. You're probably going to get to 60,000 pounds and then get into like uh, frustrating and kind of get stuck there. So what I think is set your goals bigger. If your goal is 1 million pounds a year, you'll get to about 600,000 and then run into issues. So would you rather be stuck at 60,000 or 600,000? And I say set bigger goals and accept that you're gonna fail.
No, that's amazing. When you started that, I thought that it was going to be a more of a be realistic in life necessarily, but
Oh, fuck being realistic, bro. Be as delusional as humanly possible.